What's up? Welcome back to the Studley Vlog. Today we are going to continue our adventure on this road trip throughout Mammoth. We went back to the campground at Convict Lake and went down to the lake to shoot some photos. So you're wondering, why is this place called Convict Lake? Turns out that back in 1871, there was a group of convicts that escaped prison from Carson City, Nevada, and they went and hung out and were hiding by the lake. And there was a posse that followed them and ended up having like a crazy shootout, I guess. And a bunch of people were wounded and died, and the convicts actually survived the initial escape, but then were later captured. But because of all this that happened, they named it Convict Lake. The whole area is just so nice and beautiful. The water's like super clear, and there's actually a bunch of trout that you can catch if you go fishing in there. Walking back to our camp spot, and we came across a bunch more deer, and it's pretty crazy because you can get like right up to them because they're so used to people being in the area. The next morning we woke up and headed out to Mono Lake. Mono Lake is about an hour to an hour and a half from Mammoth Lake, and it was just an amazing drive down the 395. So we made it to Mono Lake, and this place was just so peaceful and calm. So the water here is actually salt water, and it's full of alkaline, so they can't actually use it for drinking water, so it's just a lake. The lake is home to a bunch of brine shrimp and a ton of achille flies. And when I mean like flies, I mean like hundreds and hundreds of them across the water. It was pretty gross, but also pretty interesting to see. Another strange thing is that there is bubbling water all over, and because of the area and because it's close to so many hot springs, there's just bubbling water and sulfur coming through. I didn't realize it at the time, but there's an American artist named Robert Smithson who was known for his spiral arts and making pieces of art out of stuff that already exists in nature. And he actually shot a Super 8 video called Mono Lake when he was visiting. I had picked up a few rolls of the new Ektachrome 100 slide film to shoot during this trip. And I also found a roll in my fridge of some E200, which was some expired slide film from the 80s that a friend of mine had given me. So I shot it, and the results turned out really well. Peter had wanted to go out into the water because there's so much salt in there. It's similar to the Dead Sea, which is in Israel. So while he was out there, I took a few photos of him, and the results were pretty cool. had mentioned that there was a lot of flies on the lake, and this is what showed up in the pictures. It's pretty crazy. We headed to another spot on the lake where the tufa tower formations are. Now these are calcium mixed with the alkaline, and they made these like crazy tower things. They're just like mounds of calcium, but because the lake water had dropped years and years ago, they're now visible because they originally were underwater. The area is super nice because there's not a lot of visitors there, and it's just a super chill and peaceful place. So I don't shoot Ektachrome too much because it's a little expensive and I didn't have access to a way to process the film. But now that I have a Jobo, I can process the E6 at home. One of the things about slide film is that you have a very small latitude of overexposure, underexposure. So you have to get your shots like dead on exposure. I think you can adjust by maybe 1/3 of a stop before that's how much your latitude is, compared to color film where you can over or underexpose it like 8 stops and still pull out a usable image. We left Mono Lake and headed over to the area next to it, which houses the Panum Crater. This place is pretty cool. It used to be a giant volcano, and now that it's not active anymore, it's just a bunch of rocks and a giant hill. So Peter and I split up. I went to the right and he went to the left, and I ended up hiking up this crazy mountain with just tons of rocks. And the crazy thing is that these aren't just like normal rocks, they're pumice stone. So as you walk around on them, it sounds like you're walking on glass. I noticed Peter over there, and we ended up meeting up kind of in the middle. Because the area is so open and we're up so high, you could actually see the storm coming in over on the left. And right over there is Mono Lake, and that's where we were earlier. So we went to go back down, and Peter went the way he came up, and I went the way that I came up, and that's where things got a bit interesting. I went down a different ledge, which ended up me falling into a bunch of dirt, which was like quicksand, except it's on a hill, so you just slowly slide down it. And yeah, it was pretty crazy. But the thing that freaked me out the most, more than almost falling and getting covered in rocks, was that there was this random guy that came out of nowhere and was like, "You okay, bro?" And I literally like jumped, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine. But yeah, it was pretty gnarly. So Peter had wanted to use his slackline, so he set it up between some trees and started slacking. I don't know what the term is, but started walking on the slackline rope thing. Yeah, you know what I mean. He had asked me if I could take a few photos of him while he was on this, so of course I had to bust out the Pentax 6.7 and I loaded up some HP5, which I metered at 800, and I shot with my 105, my 55, and then my 200mm lens. I also had my Leica M6, and I was using my 15mm 4.5 Voigtlander lens for some ultra wide shots. We had noticed that the sun was starting to set, so we headed up the mountain, which was actually a pretty long drive, about 30 minutes till we got to the top, and it was totally worth it. The next day, we headed over to the earthquake fault, which is the fault line that runs throughout California. And this was one that opened up in the 1800s, and Indians actually used to put their food down there to keep it cool because it was drastically way cooler. There was a spot where you could go down and check it out, and it was a little sketchy, but we made it, and it was literally like 60 degrees or cooler in there. There's actually ice and snow down there, and up top it's like 90 to 100 degrees, so it was pretty cool. It looks like some tree came and knocked over this poor sign. We were a bit tired from the day before, so we headed up to another lake to just chill and hang out. It got pretty windy up there, and there was a rock kind of in the middle of the lake, and I was like, yo, I bet you won't go out there. And the next thing I know, Peter's out walking towards the rock. Peter wanted to show me this other lake that he knew about, and we headed out towards it, and we noticed a huge fire had started, and it was right next to the lake where we were going to go. So this was in Inyo National Park, I-N-Y-O, not being slang, but yeah, it started up, and I didn't have any of my fire gear with me or my press pass, so we didn't get to go in, photograph it, but this is what I got from the outside. Also, this lady was like chilling, smoking a cigarette, watching the whole area burn. Pretty weird. So because of the fire, we headed to a few different spots that Peter had known about. This was a river, and it was pretty cool because there was tons of hot springs throughout it. Over to another hot spring area, and this is one where you can't go in to the water, but you can see it from behind the fence. Peter wanted to find the actual hot springs that are out there, but instead we came across a whole ton of cows. Pretty crazy because we were about 20 or 30 miles away and we could still see the smoke. So there are a ton of different little hot springs, and we came to this one, which was one of the bigger ones, where you could go and chill. We had planned on going in, but because of COVID, we didn't want to get in the water with anyone. But we did feel the water a little bit, and it was like 110 degrees. It was pretty hot. So we started driving, just trying to find some cool places to hang out and shoot, and we came across a couple dope spots. We were driving and we came across these abandoned buildings, which were like made out of old wood, and it was just such a cool little spot. While I was shooting these houses, I was shooting on some slide film with my Pentax 6.7, and my camera actually jammed and broke, and I lost the whole roll of film and my camera broke. So it kind of sucked, but I'm going to be sending that camera out to get repaired. But luckily, I had brought my Hasselblad as a backup so that Peter could use it, so I just switched over to shooting with that. We were looking around on Google Maps and noticed that Nevada was just a couple miles away from us, so we headed to Nevada. Finally left California, went to Nevada, and ended up being super trashy. There's just trash all over the Nevada side. What's it like over there in California? Okay, I kind of miss California. Want to go back? Okay.
Great.
So Peter had loaded the Hasselblad with some FP4, and I was shooting with it, and for some reason the roll ended up not getting rolled back on correctly, so there was a few light leaks. California right now.
California. Can't wait. Sunny beaches, lots of babes.
Tons of liberals.
Oh yeah. Let's go, Portra! Let's go! Let's go! Woo!
Yeah, it kind of is the same. On the way back, we stopped off in Benton Station, and it's a pretty small town, but super nice, super chill. headed back to Mammoth after a long drive. The next morning, we packed up and headed out and left Mammoth. It was such a cool place, and there was just so much stuff to do and to see, and it's all like 30 minutes drive from each other. Here are a few shots I took on the way back. We stopped at Red Rocks Canyon, which is just a really interesting landscape. There's these crazy rocks that are just protruding out of the ground, and then everywhere around it is just flat. I also have no idea why, but there's just these like holes inside the picnic tables. Thanks for tuning in and coming along on this adventure with me, and I'll see you next time. Also, huge shout out to Red Room Photo Lab. They hooked me up and processed 22 rolls of film in 4 hours.